I'm wanting to learn more about broader perspective and the love that's there for us from broader perspective. I hear when Abraham says that we have access to all the thoughts that ever have been in terms of our choosing. Does thought think? In other words, those thoughts, do they try to reach us as well? Or is it our trying to reach those thoughts that help us access those thoughts?
Well, both happen, because there must be a transmitting and a receiving. In other words, when you rendezvous with a thought, it is a vibration, and so is the thought that you are generating. That's what causes the rendezvous. But from a physical perspective, this is a very perfect question, because you think in terms of life experience being manifested in physical form. And so when you think of a thinker, you think of a body, a mass of flesh, blood, and bone that then can generate thought. But from the non-physical perspective, where you are not flesh, blood, and bone, but instead energy and vibration and consciousness, from the human perspective, that consciousness might look like a thought that is thinking. In other words, where does a thought become a thinker? And we would say any thought that exists offers vibration and therefore is doing the thing that thoughts do, which is think. And so it's really a fine line that you're drawing. And we think that it would not occur to you if you were looking at it from the vantage point of non-physical.
So when we see this buffet of choices that we have, or we're trying to get greater clarity around what we want to create, we have access to what we've experienced, but we also have access to this non-physical energy that helps to inform our buffet of choices.
Well, the way we would approach it, this is a much easier way of approaching this. We would say, I am a physical leading edge thinker who is deliberately choosing to focus upon things that feel good, and in doing so, I align my vibration with the broader part of me which thinks. So now the whole of me is approaching my life experience. In other words, we think that it would be more beneficial to think in terms of, in your physical format, speaking from your leading edge perspective, what am I focusing upon? Using the word focus, meaning the action part, rather than the subject that you are focusing upon. In other words, what am I putting the emphasis upon the focusing rather than upon the plethora of thoughts that you might think about?
Okay, I see.
I am a focuser, and rather than trying too hard to examine the myriad of possibilities that you might focus upon, instead think in terms of the way you want to feel and let that be your guiding, focusing mechanism. So in other words, when you start caring about how you feel and you start choosing the path of least resistance, which is the path that always feels the best, in time what begins to happen is that you begin to generate a vibrational base that then limits the access of all that you could think about to only those things that are within the vibrational range of that which is you, which turns out is not limiting at all, because when you choose thoughts that feel good so that you line up with that which is your source, the universe opens to you in a very broad way. The reason that we're even having this discussion at all is because in the human form, let us back up to something that you said earlier. Every thought that has ever been thought still exists. And so, as man is having his conscious thoughts, these thoughts are spinning off, and law of attraction is causing them to coalesce. So you have literally rivers or streams of thoughts that you have access to. And what we're suggesting, and source energy is a part of many of those. So what we're suggesting is, instead of trying to catalog and pigeonhole all of the thoughts that exist and even figure out who generated them, because every thought is expanding, no thought is ever really complete, instead focus upon your ability to focus and let your desire be about how you feel while you are focusing. And as you're reaching for the path of least resistance, you will hook up with who you really are more of the time, gain access to a broader view about what you are focused upon right here and now. Think about it. How wonderful is it to have a project of your desire that you are focusing upon and have the energy that creates worlds flowing through you? It is so satisfying. And we think sometimes that you underestimate the quality and the value of your projects. In other words, oh, this paltry little project, how should I have the energy that creates worlds working with me on this? And we say, that's how this universe expands. There is nothing that source energy would rather focus upon than the things that the leading edge creator that is you is defining, you see. As Jerry and Esther were coming back from their sleeping room just now, they stood at the top of two escalators. One moving this way and one moving this way. And Esther said, let's race. You take that one. She said, I will take the path of least resistance. She wanted the one going down. She wanted him to take the one coming up. Path of least resistance. Hold it in your mind and always reach for that. Yes.
And is the
Did we get to where you were going with that?
Yes. But is the love from broader perspective, it's great for us, right?
Oh, there are no words to describe it. You cannot, in your physical form, even begin to comprehend this energy of well-being and its attention to you. You talk about things like, when it is asked, it is given, and you say things like, we live in this grace, but we say, you really have no idea of the vastness, the consistency, the depth and the power of the focus and the well-being that is presented to you. You can sometimes you slip into it. Sometimes you're in a mode where you are appreciating something, where you have, for whatever reason, left your troubling thoughts behind, and you're just in that pure moment where you are really purely adoring something or someone or basking, and you get a glimpse of it.
So as we're learning, with your help, to line up our energy and to allow the well-being to flow.
And how do you do that?
By choosing thoughts that feel best.
So if you're mad at someone and you're trying to solve it, is that the way?
No, it's best to think something else. Or choose another topic or another area that makes us feel better.
So by caring how you feel and by deliberately reaching for thoughts that feel good, you find that path, you find that path, you find that path, you find that path, you find that path until you are that path. You become that same, in other words, imagine this energy that we are describing to you. Imagine you allowing it to flow through you.
So when you say that things are lining up, so that when we can reach that point of clarity and focus and pure positive energy, so that things are all lining up and feeling good, then from broader perspective, all that's being lined up, that's trying to reach us too?
Well, the thing that is making your question a little bit different from what we're wanting you to understand is, in your human form, you want to line things up in order to affect outcomes. And we want you to line things up for the moment of alignment. And the outcome is inevitable.
So for the fun of it.
For the joy of the moment. In other words, everything that everyone wants, without exception, whether it's a relationship or an experience or a material object, is because in the having or the being or the doing of it, you think you will feel better. And we're wanting you to focus upon how to feel good apart from the manifestation. Because then all manifestations that match that well-being flow into your experience. People so often say, here I stand in the absence of something that I want. So I'm willing to do whatever you say, Abraham, or anyone else, in order to get from where I am without the things I want over to the place where the things that I want are. And we say, we like you to have a goal. And we like that you want your experience to improve and be better. But we want you to care more about how you feel than the manifestation of the experience. And when you do, anything that you've ever desired will easily manifest. You see, what happens is, when you want something that isn't, and you're focused and you're constantly comparing where you stand relative to where you want to be, you're keeping where you stand actively alive. So you can't be a match to what you want as long as where you stand is the most active part of your vibration. We've been offering a fun analogy. In fact, we will probably do it forevermore because it helps you to understand this point that we're wanting to make here. Which do you choose if you were given two choices only? Do you choose feeling good or feeling bad? You want to feel good. If you were given these two choices, which would you choose? Truth or untruth?
Truth.
And if you were given these choices, which do you choose? Truth or feeling good?
Feeling good?
Of course, but that's not what most humans default to. In other words, most humans have been trained that whether they do it or not, that they should tell the truth. Which means the truth of it is I don't have enough money. The truth of it is my body is hurting. The truth of it is somebody was mean to me. The truth of it is there are bad things that are happening. And as you have become so oriented to always face reality, then you are it's like you have your feet nailed to the floor. You cannot experience something more. And so we're wanting you to sort of let loose of that and start using the guidance that you were born with to feel your way to the connection with the well-being that will allow all things that you want to come forth. In other words, there are so many glorious things that are true. And we think it is a wonderful thing to find those things matching one another. But people will say, I'm not happy where I am. And that's the truth of it. And we will say, well, then let's focus upon some other picture. And they say, but I need to talk about my issue. And we say, but if we talk about your issue, we just keep making that the truth of your reality. Let's talk about something else and make it the truth of your reality. But somehow the truth that is already manifested seems so much bigger and more important that you think you should give more attention to that. And we say, all of these truths that people are living and touting and that you are feeling that you want to give your attention to are just vibrations that someone else is focused upon. That's how they became somebody's truth or reality, you see. So, as you think about thoughts, it can become overwhelming. As you think about trying to sort out thoughts and choose the appropriate thoughts, it becomes overwhelming. But as you make a determination, I want to feel good, and then you find yourself lying in the bed, pondering something that happened that day, and recognizing that you're all knotted up and that you don't feel good, then stop and say, this is not a good choice for me. And then don't beat up on yourself because you can't let it go instantly, because once it's activated, law of attraction is bringing you more things that are like it. But just make a sort of even out loud resolve. I'm going to try to focus upon more life-giving things, more better feeling things. And there are so many things that you could just turn your attention to. You could, in your mind, clean out your kitchen drawer without even getting out of bed. Think, what are the contents of my kitchen drawer? It's been a little disorderly. What's in there, and what do I really need most that's in there? What would be the very best? What do I need most often when I go to my kitchen drawer? Well, there's that blade that cuts open parcels, and there's that measuring tape I'm reaching for often, and there's the screwdriver that I occasionally need, and as you just go through your mind the things that you need in that kitchen drawer, you will have focused upon a more life-giving subject than if you were pondering what happened that day that bothered you. In other words, you can't solve problems by focusing upon problems, because focusing upon problems activates the problem and prevents you from finding the solution. You must find a distraction from it, you see. Now, this is all in the genre of what you're talking about. These are thoughts. How do I sort out thoughts? Which thoughts should I think? And we say, take the path of least resistance. But when you pick up the stick called whatever it is, money or body or relationship, when you activate that subject, you're going to go right to the end of the stick that you have most often practiced. And so sometimes you have to just choose a different stick in order to find yourself connected to your source. And that's why we say, when you try to sort thoughts out, you'll just make yourself nutty. When you try to decide which thought is the better thought, or when you ask some governing body like a religion or some book to tell you which thought is the better thought, we say, you're setting aside this guidance system that you were born with that will always guide you to the path of least resistance. And why would you be designed, why would you be on this leading edge in a situation where you could find in any moment, personally for you, the path of least resistance? Why would that be happening for you? Because you are so loved. Because you are being constantly showered with this avalanche of well-being, of energy, of clarity, of abundance and well-being of all manner. It's flowing to you, and as you choose the path of least resistance, the path of least resistance, the path of least resistance, you blossom like a flower to that well-being, you see. We don't want you to think thoughts anymore. We want you to feel for feelings which will guide you to thoughts that... And of course, you're going to think thoughts, because that's what focusing is about. But just for a little while, focus on how you feel most.